So this requested video comes from Matt, who has a friend whose philosophy in life is, if it feels good, do it. And he asks that I discuss this and the problems with that philosophy. Now, the short, obvious answer is that if you do whatever feels good, in 10 years you're going to be riddled with STDs, laying in a gutter with a heroin needle sticking out of your arm. And that's true, but it's also, it's a very stupid answer in that it doesn't explain anything to the person themselves. It doesn't really explore the topic, doesn't really answer the question. Really answering the question is actually pretty bloody difficult if you think about it. Because what it's really getting at is the enlightened hedonist. Now, the hypothetical enlightened hedonist is the person that says, I want to live a rich and fulfilling life, ergo, I'm going to eat healthy, but, drink on occasion. I'm going to work out to stay physically fit without being obsessed with it, but, I'll still have the occasional cigarette. I'm going to live life by my terms, doing what I want, and doing what makes me happy. Now, quite frankly, folks, I have never met a truly happy, enlightened hedonist. Which is what I want to get to at the end of this video. Because at the same time, there's another concept that needs to be dispelled. There's this other philosophy or approach to life that says that everybody does what they want to do, what ultimately makes them happy. And so, if you look at the guy with the drug addiction, the drugs are making him happy. But if you look at somebody like Mother Teresa, doing what she did made her happy. It fulfilled some sort of need she had in her life. And that is just such an overly simplistic philosophy that completely ignores things like duty, honor, integrity, all of that stuff. Because if you say that a guy fighting in World War I that jumps onto a grenade to save his buddies is doing what makes him happy, you're really twisting this word into things it doesn't mean. All right, we are often called to do things that we don't want to do. Not don't want to do as in, I don't really feel like working out today, but don't want to do as in, I am absolutely mortally terrified. I am scared, I don't want to pay these consequences, but somebody has to, and I'm going to step up. And dumbing that down into you're doing whatever makes you feel happy, it's a gross oversimplification of what the human is, what we do, and how we live our lives. And it kind of leads back to the enlightened hedonism, and in fact all the problems with it. You see, the enlightened hedonist will seek out what's happy for them. But what makes you happy isn't necessarily what's good for you, and what makes you happy is going to change as you get older. And this is what the hedonist misses. As you get older, you go through different stages in your life. Like when you're a young man, or a young woman, hormones raging, you want lots and lots of sex. You want lots of casual sex. And, the funny thing is, like, the manosphere originally was largely about getting chicks. It was realizing, like, wait, feminism has lied to me my entire life. Girls don't like nice guys. And all the girls, I'm 22 years old and I want a girl, and they're all sleeping with the bad boy McBiker. How do I get the girls? And so the manosphere, it was largely about that. Game was entirely focused upon that. And yet, so many people coming out of that now, in their 30s, are saying, you know what? I kind of feel like I wasted a lot of time doing that. At the time, chasing girls, pursuing girls, was what made me happy. But was that necessarily good for me? Let's take a little bit of an extreme case to help illustrate this. Let's say you want to pursue girls, and you're 22. Well, certainly, get some style, learn some game, get some interesting hobbies and some world experience. But also, start roiding yourself up because, girls, They go to the superhero movies too. They like that six-pack abs. They like the roided up body. And certainly you can use steroids to a certain extent safely. But it's very easy to cross over that line. And the next thing you know, you're growing breasts, or your testicles are shrinking, or you get a skin condition, or whatever it is. And this winds up screwing up the rest of your life. Or you're getting all of this sex and you catch a fairly casual, a fairly insignificant venereal disease that makes you infertile. There's a lot of these young ladies that, back in their 20s, they were pursuing the Sex and the City lifestyle. They were glamorous. They were this, that. And then one STD drove them infertile, which at the time, they didn't realize they wanted children. Because when you're 20, you want sex. The children are the accidental consequence. But then you get to 30, 35, you start realizing, wait, the sex was great. Hey, sex is awesome. But actually what I'd like is some intimacy. I'd like a partner. I'd like to have somebody to share memories with. And because you were so focused on the sex, because that's what you wanted when you were 20, having the relationship is far more difficult. As we go through different stages of our life, what we want, what makes us happy and contented, changes. And to pursue the virtuous, to pursue the good, doesn't always make us happy. In the short run or the long run even sometimes. And yet by pursuing the virtuous, we generally put ourselves into a better position for this long-term happiness. To have meaning, to have catharsis, as opposed to just having a cocaine addiction. So much, okay, half the time elderly wisdom sounds like just being too tired, granted. But very often, what classical wisdom is trying to teach is to get young people to look up beyond the horizon and see what really matters in the long term. What makes you happy is going to change. And if you dedicate your life to one form of happiness, 5 years later, it's not going to work for you anymore. Rouge V just wrote an article about this. I'll link to it below. And even if you're still in that stage, and you perfect the lifestyle that makes you happy, well, the funny thing about humanity is that as soon as you get that happiness, you get bored. You want something else. So you need a higher calling in your life ultimately. And it's not just with sex, okay? You set yourself up, you learn to game chicks, and you get a nice apartment and a cool car, and now you're bored. Or you could start a business, say, I want to make money. I want to be rich. I came from a poor background. I am done being poor. I want to be rich. So you set yourself up and you get a business and you get a bunch of money. You no longer have to worry about food or rent or any of that stuff. And you get bored. It's not enough just to pursue what makes you happy, but to pursue something grander, to pursue a grander vision, a larger strategy. Seeking out happiness is the tactics, okay? Generally, it's a good idea to win a battle. But sometimes you need to retreat and lose a battle to win the larger war. So happiness is like the battle. It's like winning the battle. And if you put all of your resources into winning every single battle that you're ever in, you're going to lose the war. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. How many women do you see? How many women have been highlighted by the manosphere, neo-masculinity, whatever, they've pursued the dream. During their 20s, they pursued the sexy bad boys and had lots of really good sex. And then they went into the career path where they got to wear sexy clothing every day to the office and drive a really nice car and go to fancy dinner dates with their coworkers, get the company pays for it. Then they instead of having children, they get a cat or they get a dog. And so that niche is filled. And then they buy a house and they get all nesting and they hire landscapers and they ogle the young landscapers outside. And then they're 45, they're 50, they're 60, and they're completely alone. Every step of the way, they were pursuing what made them happy. Okay, and we're not talking about the extreme case of heroin addiction lying in a gutter. They were the enlightened hedonists pursuing what they thought they wanted every step of the way, but never asking, is this the right thing? Is this the moral thing? Because we all have that calling in our heart telling us what's right and what's wrong. And we used to have, it's still there if you look for it. It's not as loud, but we still have that societal voice that does try and say, like my dad used to say, being good at pool is a sign of a misspent youth. So I guess that's ultimately the problem. That's a problem with that philosophy, the YOLO philosophy, do whatever makes you feel good, is that you'll wind up wasting your entire life on things that you don't care about. Think back to Christmas, when you were a little kid, 10, 12, whatever, when you still believed in Santa Claus. Think back to that, how much excitement you got over getting the action figure that you were hoping for, or whatever it was. And that now you're an adult. When you think back to your childhood, what mattered more? That action figure, that happiness, or that time you and your parents went out to the horse farm and you rode a horse for the first time? Or, with me, it's my dad let me sit in his lap and drive the steering wheel, even though he still had his hands on it. Which one, as an adult, do you care about now? Because little you, 10-year-old you, would have ignored your parents to go play with a stupid action figure or to eat the bonbons, the stuff that made you happy, as opposed to the stuff that mattered. Seeking out happiness can be one of the most miserable experiences you'll have. Because, happiness, it's fleeting. It's not why we're here. It's not true satisfaction. It's not meaning. It's not catharsis. So rather than seeking out happiness, I would suggest seeking out the good. Learning about yourself, learning what is good, and paying attention to those around you. Paying attention to old wisdom, paying attention to all this stuff. And learning from your mistakes, or better yet, the mistakes of others. Best of luck to all of you folks. Deus Volt, Aurini out.